The Galactic Academy was unlike any other structure in known space, a monument to interspecies cooperation and ambition. Its halls stretched in curves of transparent alloy that revealed the nebulae beyond, the stars burning as if the universe itself were a living classroom. Inside, hundreds of species mingled in varying shades of arrogance, curiosity, and fear. For most cadets, this was their first encounter with cultures beyond their own, a chance to prove superiority or learn humility. For Marcus Hale, it was simply another room, another chair, another day of silence. He sat quietly at the edge of the lecture chamber, posture rigid but unassuming, his uniform plain, his presence nearly invisible among the rainbow of scales, fur, and chitin. He did not fidget, did not shift, did not betray a single sign that he was aware of the stares burning holes into the back of his skull. Among giants with claws, wings, mandibles, and quills, he looked painfully ordinary, almost fragile. That illusion was precisely why the others underestimated him. They called him the Silent One, the Earthling who never raised his voice, never answered questions unless pressed, never sought companionship outside the required group exercises. His calm refusal to engage only deepened the fascination and contempt of his peers. A Deathworlder, they whispered, though the title sounded more like mockery than respect. Their information about humans came in fragments, snatches of xenobiology lectures, second-hand accounts, or the exaggerated rumors that blossomed in shared quarters. To many, Earth was an outlier planet, a hostile anomaly that should have killed its dominant species long before it ever reached the stars. To see one of its sons sitting meekly in a classroom was a contradiction too tempting to leave unchallenged. Drask Vaylor had taken it upon himself to resolve that contradiction. The reptilian towered nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide patterned with crimson and obsidian stripes that shimmered under the artificial lights. Descendant of a high-gravity predator race, his body radiated strength with every calculated movement. He was the kind of cadet who dominated the room simply by existing, his voice rumbling low and sharp, his claws always flexed as though eager to tear something apart. To Drask, Marcus was not a classmate but prey pretending to sit among predators. Each day offered him a new opportunity to peel away the human's composure, to force him into showing the fear he was certain lay just beneath that still surface. The Academy's culture did little to restrain him. Most instructors, seasoned diplomats themselves, considered such conflicts part of natural dominance hierarchies. Intervention came rarely, and never when the bullying remained beneath the threshold of lethal. "Look at him," Drask sneered one morning, his voice carrying easily across the lecture chamber. "So still. Do you think it's because he's frozen with fear, or because he lacks the wit to understand a single word?" His entourage of fellow predators, a pair of tusked grazers who mistook cruelty for camaraderie, snickered and thumped their tails in amusement. Marcus did not flinch. His gaze remained fixed on the holodisplay at the front of the room where the lecturer explained the evolution of aquatic civilizations. His hands rested neatly on his desk, fingers interlaced, nails clean and trimmed. Only the slow rhythm of his breathing proved he was alive at all. This refusal to react was what infuriated Drask most. He wanted Marcus to protest, to raise his voice, to bare teeth in defiance so that he could justify crushing him in front of the others. But the Earthling denied him the satisfaction day after day, denying him even the smallest ripple of emotion. "Perhaps he's too weak to defend himself," one of the tusked aliens said, tusks glinting as his mouth split into a grin. "Perhaps the rumors of his Deathworld are exaggerated. Maybe it's just a cold rock, nothing more." Laughter followed, but it was nervous, hesitant. Several students glanced at Marcus and then away quickly, as though expecting anything. But he remained still, as if their words were spoken into a void. His silence was heavier than an argument, a weight they could not interpret. The lecturer cleared his throat, trying to salvage the discussion, but even he cast brief looks at the human. Marcus ignored them all, his face an unreadable mask. If the words stung, no one would ever know. During recess, when cadets dispersed through the wide corridors of the academy, Drask cornered him near the transparent steel wall overlooking the stars. "You think silence will protect you, Earthling?" His breath smelled of copper and raw meat. "Out there, in the real galaxy, it marks you for slaughter." Marcus looked at him then, not with fear, but with eyes that seemed unblinking, ancient. For a brief instant, Drask faltered under that gaze, an animal part of him registering the wrongness, the hidden edge. But Marcus broke the connection first, turned, and walked away without a word. His retreat was so calm it felt like a dismissal, as though Drask were not worth his breath. The others whispered about it long after Marcus had gone. Some mocked Drask for failing to get a rise out of his target. Others whispered that perhaps silence meant something else entirely. None dared confront Marcus directly. They waited, curious, cautious, eager for the next clash, sensing it would come. Back in his quarters that night, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at nothing. The sounds of alien cadets filtered faintly through the walls, laughter, arguments, the shuffle of claws and the rustle of wings. He remained perfectly still, breathing slow and deep, conserving energy like a predator at rest. He did not think of Drask's words. He thought only of patience, of timing, of what humans had always known. Survival was not about noise but about choosing the precise moment to strike. The next day promised another lecture, another gauntlet of taunts. Marcus welcomed it with the same calm as he did every sunrise. He had endured far worse than words. And Drask, swelling with frustration, had already decided that tomorrow would not be enough. Tomorrow, he would escalate. That knowledge hung in the air like a storm on the horizon, unseen by most, but unavoidable all the same. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of provocation and silence. Every corner of the academy seemed to conspire to place Marcus and Drask in the same space, as if the institution itself wanted to test the limits of restraint. In the cafeteria, where alien cadets devoured meals suited to their strange physiologies, Drask would knock Marcus's tray aside with a casual flick of his scaled arm, sending ration packs skittering across the floor. In the training hall, he would shove Marcus during line formations, his claws brushing just close enough to the human's throat to draw murmurs of approval from onlookers. Through it all, Marcus remained steady, his expression unreadable, his posture unchanged. The restraint was maddening to Drask. For a predator raised on the certainty of dominance, silence was not a shield but an insult. He wanted screams, wanted a reaction that justified his aggression, and Marcus's refusal to grant it gnawed at him like an itch beneath the scales. The reptilian began to escalate, no longer satisfied with words or nudges. His claws dragged against the metal desk during lectures, screeching deliberately near Marcus's ears. He dropped weighted objects close enough to rattle the human's seat, watching carefully for the flicker of nerves that never came. Others began to take notice. Conversations buzzed in the study halls and dormitories, the topic inevitably circling back to the quiet human. Some cadets speculated that Marcus's silence was born of fear, that he was simply too fragile to risk confrontation. Others suggested it was arrogance, that he considered the rest of them beneath him and thus not worth acknowledging. A few, the more observant or the more cautious, whispered a third possibility, that the silence was intentional, a predator's patience stretched to its limit, waiting for the single moment when retaliation would be most effective. These whispers grew stronger after a lecture on planetary classifications, when an instructor, perhaps unknowingly, offered fuel to their speculations. With a flick of his digits, he projected the image of Earth onto the holoscreen, a swirling ball of blue and green. He spoke of it clinically, reciting statistics about gravity, atmosphere, tectonic instability, and the staggering array of hostile lifeforms that prowled its surface. Earth, he declared, was designated a Class V Deathworld. Few such worlds birthed intelligence. Fewer still produced civilizations capable of surviving their own environment long enough to reach the stars. The instructor paused, as though expecting Marcus to respond, but the human simply stared ahead, eyes fixed on the glowing sphere. The silence deepened, pressing against the walls of the room until the cadets shifted uneasily in their seats. Then, with a dry chuckle, the lecturer dismissed humanity as an evolutionary accident, survivors who owed their existence not to strength or wisdom but to luck. The room erupted with laughter, some mocking, some nervous. Marcus did not move. Later that day, in the crowded corridor leading to the dormitories, Drask leaned close enough that his scaled chest pressed against Marcus's shoulder. "Luck," he hissed, his breath hot and bitter. "That is all you are. Luck and silence. Strip those away, and you are nothing." He pushed him aside with enough force to draw attention but not enough to trigger disciplinary sensors. Marcus stumbled half a step, then righted himself without turning his head. The act of ignoring the shove seemed to wound Drask more deeply than any insult could have. The predator's temper sharpened in private. He vented to his entourage, pacing their quarters with claws raking the metal walls. He mocks me with every breath he does not take to answer. Do you not see it? He thinks himself above me, hiding behind that blank face. Tomorrow, I will tear it away. His followers nodded, eager for spectacle but too wary to challenge him. They had all felt the weight of Marcus's silence, even if they pretended otherwise. That night, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, the dim light casting shadows across his face. He did not brood, did not replay Drask's words. Instead, he thought of Earth, the roar of storms, the scent of iron-rich soil, the eyes of predators glowing from the dark tree line. On Earth, silence was survival. Prey that panicked, prey that made noise, never lived long enough to reproduce. Humanity had learned patience not as a virtue but as a necessity. He breathed slowly, evenly, conserving energy, letting the rhythm steady his thoughts. The storm was coming, and he knew it. He did not fear it. By morning, the academy seemed to hum with anticipation. Word had spread that Drask intended to corner the human during the next lecture. Whispers followed Marcus as he made his way through the halls, but he gave no sign that he heard them. He entered the classroom as he always did, early, quiet, unremarkable. He chose the same seat at the far edge, hands folded neatly, eyes on the holodisplay that had yet to activate. Drask arrived late, his stride deliberate, each heavy step echoing across the chamber. He did not bother to lower his voice as he leaned to his companions. Today he will break. The room shifted, students adjusting in their seats, pretending to study notes while their eyes tracked the confrontation forming. The lecturer had not yet arrived, and no authority loomed to interrupt. Marcus remained still, the very picture of calm. Yet something intangible had shifted. The air seemed thicker, charged, as though every breath was drawn through a veil of tension. Those nearest him could feel it, an unspoken warning pressing against their instincts. For the first time, a few cadets found themselves leaning back, putting distance between themselves and the human without fully realizing why. Drask did not notice. He was too consumed by his own need to dominate, too eager to shatter the illusion of calm. He loomed behind Marcus's chair, casting a shadow that swallowed the desk. His scaled hand hovered inches from the human's shoulder, claws twitching with anticipation. The silence stretched, brittle as glass. Then the door hissed open, and the instructor swept in, activating the holodisplay. The moment shattered, the confrontation delayed by circumstance. Drask growled low in his throat, retreating only far enough to avoid drawing attention. He would not wait much longer. He had already decided that the next interruption would not save Marcus. The lecture began, words spilling across the display in a torrent of data, but few cadets paid attention. Their gazes flickered between Drask's hunched posture and Marcus's unwavering stillness. The predator's patience was eroding, while the human's remained infinite. Everyone sensed it now, a collision was inevitable, and when it came, it would be decisive. By the time the session ended, the air was sharp with expectation. Drask's claws scraped lightly across the desk as he stood, his tail lashing behind him. Marcus did not rise immediately, did not acknowledge the looming threat. He sat a moment longer, breathing in, breathing out, before finally pushing himself to his feet with measured grace. He walked past Drask as though the reptilian were made of mist. The insult was unbearable. Drask's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with fury. He would no longer wait for opportunity to present itself. He would create it, and he would do so soon. The silent earthling had crossed a line too subtle for anyone else to see but too profound for Drask to forgive. The stage was set. The audience was ready. And Marcus, silent as ever, prepared for the inevitable storm with the calm of a predator that had already chosen the moment to strike. The classroom was hushed when Marcus entered the following day, the usual hum of chatter dulled into whispers that died as quickly as they rose. Every cadet present seemed to feel the air had thickened, as though the walls themselves anticipated violence. Marcus, as always, took his seat without glancing at anyone, his gaze fixed on the inactive holodisplay at the front of the room. His calm was so absolute that it seemed rehearsed, as though silence were not merely his habit but his weapon. Drask arrived moments later, scales glistening under the overhead light, his bulk filling the doorway. He strode with theatrical weight, claws clicking against the floor, tail lashing in a rhythm of impatience. His eyes locked on Marcus, and though dozens of cadets filled the chamber, the reptilian saw only him. Today would be the end of the silent game. Today, Drask would break him. The instructor began the lecture, words spilling about interspecies conflict strategies and the principles of deterrence. None of the students listened. Their focus was on the predator advancing slowly toward the human's seat, each step deliberate, each pause designed to draw out anticipation. Drask's companions leaned forward in their chairs, their tusks gleaming, their eyes wide with the thrill of impending spectacle. Others sat rigid, unease gnawing at their composure. Even the air recyclers seemed muted, as though the academy itself had decided not to interfere. Drask reached Marcus's desk. He loomed above him, shadow falling across the human's folded hands. For a moment he waited, daring Marcus to acknowledge him. Nothing. The silence was so profound that several cadets held their breath. Drask's lips peeled back to expose rows of serrated teeth. His scaled hand rose, slowly, deliberately, and then came down against the back of Marcus's head with a dull slap. Marcus did not move. His head dipped forward under the strike, then straightened again. His eyes remained on the holodisplay, unreadable, unshaken. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the room, though it faltered almost immediately. Drask's claws twitched. He struck again, harder, the sound sharper this time, echoing off the walls. The human skull bounced lightly against the desk, but again, Marcus remained silent. The instructor's voice faltered but did not stop. He saw what was happening, everyone did, but to interfere was to disrupt the academy's unspoken rules of dominance. Better to let the confrontation run its course. His eyes flickered briefly toward Marcus, then away. Drask pressed further. His clawed hand gripped Marcus's shoulder, the scales grinding against the fabric of his uniform. He squeezed, slowly increasing pressure until the claws began to pierce. The gesture was half dominance, half promise of violence. "Do you feel it now, pray?" he hissed, his voice low enough that only the nearest cadets could hear. "Do you know what it means to be beneath me?" And then Marcus moved. The change was so abrupt, so fluid, that many did not register it until it was over. His right hand shot up, faster than eyes could follow, fingers clamping around Drask's thick wrist. In the same motion, his body pivoted slightly in the chair, weight shifting with a predator's precision. A twist, subtle, controlled, efficient. The sound was obscene. A wet, snapping crack tore through the chamber, louder than it should have been, amplified by silence. Drask's eyes widened, his mouth opened to snarl, but no sound came. His neck had twisted too far, the vertebrae severed from their natural order. His massive form collapsed like a felled tree, crashing to the floor in a heap of scales and lifeless muscle. Marcus released the wrist, letting it fall limp. He adjusted his posture, straightened his collar, and returned his gaze to the holodisplay as if nothing had happened. The movement had been so economical, so deliberate, that it seemed rehearsed, yet no one had ever seen anything like it. The room was frozen. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the instructor stood rigid, mouth slightly open, his lecture forgotten mid-sentence. A few cadets leaned forward instinctively, as though to confirm that Drask was truly dead, but none dared cross the distance. The predator who had filled the room with his presence lay motionless, eyes glazed, his threat extinguished in the span of a single heartbeat. For the first time in weeks, Marcus spoke. His voice was quiet, steady, carrying across the silence with the weight of inevitability. "You should never mistake silence for weakness." The words fell heavy, echoing in the minds of everyone present. They were not shouted, not triumphant, not cruel. They were simply a truth delivered without malice, a truth that seemed to belong not to Marcus alone but to his entire species. A shudder rippled through the classroom. Those who had once laughed at him now found themselves leaning away, instinct tugging them to create distance. Others stared, eyes wide with fascination, as though seeing Marcus for the first time. The tusked followers of Drask glanced at one another, their bravado gone, replaced by the raw awareness that they had been in the shadow of something they did not understand. The instructor regained his voice with difficulty. His throat worked as he swallowed, words catching before he managed a hoarse whisper. "Security, call security." But even as drones whirred awake from their recessed ports in the walls, no one took their eyes off Marcus. He remained seated, posture calm, hands folded again as if he were merely another cadet attending another ordinary lesson. The silence that followed was worse than the strike, worse than the crack of bone. It pressed against the cadets' lungs, forced them to breathe shallow, uncertain breaths. The human had not roared, had not snarled, had not risen to display victory. He had simply acted, precise and final, and then returned to stillness. That stillness now terrified them. Whispers would follow later, spreading like wildfire through the academy. They would say that a Deathworlder could kill without effort, that even seated, even restrained, a human was more dangerous than a predator bred for dominance. They would argue over whether Marcus's restraint had been mercy or cruelty, whether his silence had been patience or disdain. But in that moment, none of them could summon words. Marcus did not look at them. His gaze remained on the glowing diagrams flickering across the holodisplay, as if interspecies conflict strategies were still the only subject worth his attention. But those seated nearby swore later that they had seen something in his eyes, not rage, not pride, but the steady, unblinking focus of a predator who had simply done what was necessary. When the drones arrived and scanned the fallen reptilian, confirming the absence of life, the classroom seemed to exhale collectively. Still, no one spoke to Marcus. No one dared. The lesson, unplanned and unforgettable, had already been delivered. And though Drask's body was removed, though officials hurried to catalogue the incident, though rumors spread to every corner of the academy, Marcus Hale remained seated, as silent as ever, his stillness now a presence no one could ignore. Security drones ringed Marcus within minutes, their metallic limbs whirring as they leveled containment beams at his chest. He did not move, did not resist, only sat with the same poise he had carried since stepping foot in the academy. The body of Drask Vaylor had been dragged away, leaving behind a stain of silence that clung to every cadet present. None could meet Marcus's gaze directly, though many tried. Those who had once mocked him now looked upon him as if staring too long might invite the same swift, merciless fate. The instructor dismissed the class with a shaky gesture, his voice cracking as he insisted that all official statements must wait for investigation. Students filed out slowly, hushed, stealing furtive glances at the human who remained seated. Word was already spreading, racing through the academy's channels faster than any fleet could travel. By the time Marcus was escorted from the room, the story had reached half the student body, each retelling embellishing the event into legend. The council chamber was not meant to intimidate, yet its grand design accomplished exactly that. A dome of crystal alloy stretched above, refracting the stars into countless shifting patterns. Delegates from a dozen worlds sat at curved benches, their varied physiologies and expressions unified only in their unease. They had convened in haste, called to pass judgment on the human whose stillness now haunted every corridor. Marcus stood before them without restraint. The drones had attempted to shackle him, but finding his compliance absolute, they had relented. He remained motionless at the center of the chamber, hands clasped neatly behind his back, posture impeccable. He looked neither humbled nor defiant, but composed, an embodiment of a truth that unsettled every being present. The presiding counselor, a feathered dignitary with gold-tinged plumage, cleared his throat, his voice sharp to disguise its tremor. "You stand accused of lethal force against a fellow cadet. Explain yourself." Marcus's eyes lifted, calm and unblinking. "He struck me," he said. The words were simple, unadorned, yet carried a gravity that silenced the chamber. "He mistook my silence for weakness." The murmurs began immediately. Some counselors bristled at the arrogance in his tone, while others leaned forward, fascinated. The reptilian delegate, kin to Drask's people, slammed a claw against the bench. A disciplinary matter does not justify execution. He could have been restrained. Marcus's gaze shifted toward him, steady and unwavering. "Restraint is mercy," he replied. Mercy is not owed to one who chooses cruelty as his only language. The words cut sharper than claws. For the first time, the delegates saw not a boy but the distilled philosophy of a species forged in unrelenting hostility. Silence was not cowardice, it was patience. Violence was not indulgence, it was necessity. This realization rippled through the chamber like an unseen tide, altering every perception. The feathered counselor tried to regain control. Is this what humanity represents? A species so dangerous it cannot coexist within civilized structures? Marcus did not hesitate. Humanity represents survival. On our world, storms strip coasts bare, predators hunt with venom and tooth, and the ground itself shifts without warning. We did not endure through dominance. We endured through endurance. Through choosing our battles. Through silence until the moment to act arrived. His voice deepened, each word delivered with calm certainty. We are not dangerous because we kill. We are dangerous because we wait. The chamber fell still. Every delegate felt the truth of it, not because Marcus demanded belief, but because the stillness in his eyes reflected lifetimes of survival carved into his people's marrow. The reptilian delegate faltered, his fury tempered by something older and less easily dismissed, instinctive fear. One of the insectoid counselors, clicking mandibles nervously, asked the question that hovered unspoken. If one human cadet can kill so swiftly, what would a trained human soldier achieve? Marcus did not smile, did not gloat. He only answered, whatever they must. The counselor recoiled, wings rustling with unease. The debate raged then, voices clashing in a cacophony of fear, awe, and denial. Some demanded humanity's immediate expulsion, others insisted that to alienate such a species would be folly, and a few suggested that forging alliance with Earth might be the most prudent course. Through it all, Marcus remained unmoved, a silent anchor in the storm. Every attempt to diminish him, every accusation hurled across the chamber, broke against the calm wall of his composure. When the shouting reached its peak, Marcus raised a hand. The gesture was small, yet it silenced the council as surely as if he had commanded it. You wanted to know what makes a Deathworlder, he said evenly. Now you do. The words struck with finality. No delegate dared to speak after them. The chamber seemed suddenly colder, the stars refracted above them distant and harsh. They saw in Marcus not a student, not even an individual, but a window into a species that had survived everything their world could throw at them, and that survival, transposed into the stars, carried a weight no council could dismiss. The session was adjourned without verdict, the councillors dispersing in uneasy silence, each calculating what this meant for their alliances and their security. Marcus was left to walk free, not because he was absolved, but because no one dared to decide otherwise. In the corridors outside, cadets parted as he passed, their eyes wide, their bodies angled subtly away from him. None spoke. None dared. The silence that once made Marcus invisible now made him inescapable. He walked with measured steps, not hurried, not slow, but steady, his figure cutting through the academy like a shadow that could not be touched. Alone in his quarters that evening, he sat once more on the edge of his bunk, breathing in the still rhythm that had carried him all his life. He thought of Earth, the endless storms, the unrelenting predators, the fragile yet stubborn persistence of his people. He had not come to the academy to dominate, nor to be dominated. He had come to learn, to measure, to endure. And endure he had. Beyond the academy walls, whispers traveled faster than any vessel. Across the galaxy, in forums, in council halls, in barracks, species spoke of the human cadet who had killed without rising from his seat. Some told the story in fear, others in awe, but all told it. Humanity was no longer a curiosity tucked into obscure lectures. Humanity was a reality they could not ignore. Marcus leaned back, closed his eyes, and let silence wash over him once more. He had said all he needed to say. The galaxy would spend years deciding what it meant. And somewhere deep inside, a truth lingered, patient and unyielding. Silence was not weakness. It was the warning before the strike.